Howdy, class, and welcome to today's lecture on staff training. So we'll start here by having a quote, and you see it from Maya Angelou here. Is that I've learned that people will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how they made me feel. On the topic of staff training, having a staff that understands that you care for them and that you are looking out for the best, as well as training and improving their skills, will go a long way to having a successful program. So we're going to go over some of the issues, some of the ideas about staffing, from where to start to with new hires to how to work with more seasoned staff members. So to begin, you need to determine what you need in a staff. You can start by creating position descriptions and whether they're paid or volunteer staff. You can follow this up by determining the principal duties that might be with each position, as well as some of the other potential duties that are shared with other positions. You might consider what equipment is used, such as the differences in need between, say, a cafeteria position as well as what would be different with a backcountry guide. I suggest you use industry standards, and you can find those from organizations like the American Camp Association, as it's a great way to align your camp positions with others in terms of what are the required qualifications and potential salaries for that job. And just so you know, so thoroughly detailing what you're looking for at a position is an important first step in hiring and aligning the right people for the right job. The more you put up front and the more clear you are about what you're looking for, the easier it'll be to find that person. So here is a model that many have used when referring to staffing. So this is a moniker that can kind of provide a path for you on how you train and retain your staff. You have identification, so finding the right people. Selection, making sure that you vet them correctly. Vetting means that you're going through their background and making sure they're the right person for that job or they have the right skills for that job. Orientation will be how you familiarize them with the organization as well as their duties. Training is helping them to develop the skills they'll need. Utilization is putting the right people and their skills in the right position. Recognition is acknowledging their efforts and rewarding those efforts, as well as evaluations, which is measuring their performance. Now that you have the positions described, you can start advertising and interviewing candidates. A comprehensive interview and proper vetting process of your staff can lessen the liability and the risk of hiring or making bad hiring decisions. You need to include these bullet points here when you start looking at your staff hires to ensure that you're running a fair process for all the parties. We want to make sure that we're not being discriminatory. We have a standardized process. Candidates are always allowed to ask questions focusing on the position, but you as a staff member have to understand that you're hiring a person, but not necessarily needing to know their personal situation. When working with youth, especially, background checks are mandatory. That's a no-brainer. You need to know who's coming in contact with the children. Um, Taking care to do multiple reference checks with standardized questions is a good way to get a feel for who that candidate is. Whether she or he is the right fit can sometimes come across with what they've done in their past. And don't be afraid to use social media. Do so after the initial review and notify candidates ahead of time. One of the worst things about being a candidate is the lack of communication from a hiring department. So once you know a person is not going to be your candidate, you need to let them know as soon as possible so they can pursue other options. Once you have that, once you've hired the staff, you need to train them. And here are some of the examples of the trainings that are quite common in most workforces. I kind of split them in two, you see, within new hire training or current staff training. Uh, New hire training could include things like orientation, which is going through your HR and filling out paperwork for insurance and medical and their paychecks. But onboarding is the next one, and that's more so about what the employee needs to do their job. So sometimes you see orientation and onboarding put together, but really those are separate things. And especially onboarding in the camp situation needs to be split further so you can go into a deeper dive into what that new hire is going to need to be successful in your youth program. Then you'll get into skill development. There's two types of skills, your technical skills or your soft skills. Technical skills being specifically like working with animals or being a high ropes instructor or leading groups in the backcountry like we discussed. Soft skills would be like communication, leadership, uh, how to work with youth on an emotional level, so social emotional skills, things like that. You also have current staff training that is quite common, so things that are mandatory like health and safety trainings. These can happen yearly. Um, if you work for the university here, you will get emails quite often that you have to do train track trainings, and so you probably have one in your email right now about coming back to school in the fall. And if this is the fall class, I'm sorry you're having to hear this. But there's trainings that are required to be updated quite often. And then anytime you have a new policy or a new shift in the way you're doing things, you'll want to have trainings on that as well. So comprehensive staff training is critical to program success, like we said. And if you're not having fun training your staff, then your staff are not having fun being trained. So here are some easy ways that you can arrange your training to help create a fun and successful session. So you have these ideas. We kind of put them into a food theme here as appetizers, brain bites, and movement morsels. So appetizers, what is being taught first is also the last remembered. You want to look for ways to hook the learner in. These sometimes you'll have icebreakers and such. Um, then you move on to brain bites. So this is the meat of your session that you're trying to go through. So you want to optimize your learning and retention as much as possible. So using mnemonics, using metaphors and props, storytelling, all of these uh, visual and auditory aids are things that can help individuals really retain that bit of information that's important. And then finally, you're talking about concluding with movement morsels. And so this is when you talk about movement and play, uh, using sing songs, playing music, kind of wrap it up as well as to tie in things at the very end. There's a lot of research that talks about individuals who are moving while they're learning can retain a, to a greater extent than those who are just sitting uh, in a state like you're probably doing right now. So for your established and seasoned workers, sometimes you talked about policy changes. There can be issues related to getting buy-in from your staff. So I have some bullet points here that I want you to look through that you need to consider when doing such. You need to approach the situation with caution and commitment. People become entrenched in their jobs and they don't necessarily like a lot of change. They may have the mindset that if it's not broken, don't fix it. Um, and you need to understand that. And some things can be changed, some things may not be able to change very easily. So you need to consider your battles very carefully. Um, in order to get a policy implemented correctly, a lot of times you'll want to start with getting the buy in of your key leadership staff. They're the ones who have effect on your other staff. So it's always important to get their buy in. Get on the train means to look at the industry and how you can gain credibility, or you might be aligning with what is happening in the field and you need to change to be a part of that. And then there's a few more here. One of the worst ones that people like to use is "this is how we've always done it," or "it's how we did it at the blank program" as rationale. Um, this is one of the key limiters, I would say, to program success, is when people get too entrenched and for the sake of tradition or for the sake of not wanting to adapt, they tend to throw out lines, like I said, as "this is how we've always done it and it's been successful," et cetera, et cetera. And so you may come across this and you need to have an answer ready to go when this comes across. Now we'll get to working with your staff. Your relationship with your staff can make or break your program. While it's not appropriate to be their friend, it is important to understand that it doesn't mean that you can't be friendly and approachable. So in ways to work with your staff, there's certain supervisional techniques that you can implement. These come from the American Camp Association, um, about how to work with your staff, such as holding daily meetings to help your staff bond. You can have the open door approach, where people can come and interact with you um, and one another. Encourage informational sharing. This can be, if you look at an organizational ladder, I like to talk about a up-down response. So when it comes to information should be going both ways. Your boss should know what you're doing, and the people below you should know what you're doing as well. And then the people below you need to feel that they can share information with you so it can be passed on. So information needs to be flowing in both directions. And then at the end of the day, always try to end on a positive note. When people are going home at the end of the day or going back to their cabins, in many a sense with our camp scenarios, bringing the staff together is talking about things and discussing the day's successes and failures is always a good way to kind of end on a positive note. Now, it's your responsibility to find out whatever that positive note is and to make sure that it's discussed. So this is sort of a short lecture today. So we're going to talk about Practicum 9 here. On the module, you'll have a document that you can download that will talk about staff scenarios. I want you to read through each scenario and determine how you would respond as the role of a program leader or director. To clarify, read through each of the training scenarios, but select 7 of them to answer. In the directions, you will find details about what I'm looking for in an answer. You may use any source that you choose, such as websites or talking with former employers, etc., but make sure that you provide a reference for this information. And also, because I forgot to make Module 9 available in time to you, I've now decided that Module 9 and its assignments will be due on Tuesday, October 20th at 11:59 p.m. on Canvas. Okay, the end of Module 9. This is where we start working on our standard operating procedure manuals. Like the curriculum project, the standard operating procedure manual is a building compilation of the EOMs 9 through 12s. So for EOM 9, what I'm asking you to do sounds similar. I want you to plan a 3-day staff training sessions. All right. So you're going to prepare your staff to implement your camp program that you previously have done. So I need you to plan for a minimum of 16 contact hours. Now that does not include hours such as lunch or breaks or anything along those lines. I need you to account for 16 hours of pure training. All right. So I'll provide an example of what I'm talking about, and you can use that template as you fill it out. But I also want you to be sure to explain each session to me within the appendix so I understand what that session one is about, what you're going to include. But I want you to make sure that your training is fun. Many people who work with kids want to have a motivating and empowering and engaging training, so be interactive and be engaging. As part of your training, I want you to include the following, but I also don't want to limit you. So things that might be included in a training session, say for onboarding, right? You may want to include the camp organizational chart. I need to know what the title and jobs of functions are within um, Pacific Camp. I want to know the activity directions. I want to know about employee assessment and how I'm going to be assessed as one of your people. I want to talk about emergency protocols, and these are that are others that are necessary. So you'll see how this is done. Like I said, so you'll take activity directions, right, and that'll be one of your sessions, and then you'll go through the template and you'll discuss you'll discuss that activity. You'll tell them, you'll break it down, um, and go through each and every one of these. So you'll have something on camps organization. You'll have a session on job functions. You'll have a session on activities. You'll have a session on employee assessment. You'll have a session on emergency protocols. Now use the internet as much as you can. Find examples from other trainings and how they describe what that session's about. I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel, but I want you to take a look at how these things are incorporated into your camp program. All right, staff or class, thank you for listening to the staff training lecture, and see you in the next one. Thanks.